Okay, hello, we're here with Wanda Smook from Action Property Management today, and what we want to discuss is how you can invest not living in Fort St. John in northeastern BC with the help of Wanda. So I'd just like to give a bit of an introduction to Wanda. She currently manages my personal portfolio. When I shut down property management myself, I handed everything to Wanda. We've been working closely for the last few years. And just like to talk a little bit about who she is, what she's been doing, and how you can work with her. So just to start off, I'd like to just introduce Wanda, and we'll get a little bit of her background in the business and why she's there. So Wanda, if I can ask you a few questions.
Sure.
Could you give me a bit about your background in the business and kind of what brought you in there and where you are today in property management?
Yeah, I got into the property management about 25 years ago. I started as a site manager, managing apartment buildings, taking care of the maintenance and whatnot, and I worked my way up.
25 years ago, old school.
It is very old school,
Okay.
It was, yes. And yeah, I just kind of worked my way up through the company that I was with at the time. I took my licensing, and in 2010 I decided to start my own, so I broke away from that company and started Action Property.
So it's been about 5.5 years, I guess, with that now. Almost 6.
Almost 6 years, yeah, and it's going very well. I have an office in Fort St. John as well as Dawson Creek.
Okay.
And yeah, we're at just over 860 units. So
you guys are growing fast now.
It's growing very fast, yes.
So how about your staffing capabilities? I mean, those staffing right now, how many people do you have in the office? Who's working there with you right now?
In my Fort St. John office, I have 5 girls in the office. I have 3 in my Dawson office, a licensed property manager in Dawson. Fort St. John, I have my receptionist who pretty much takes care of all the day-to-day questions and complaints and applications, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And then I have 2 girls that just strictly do showings, move-ins, move-outs, posting notices. That's pretty much all they do.
Okay.
And then my accounting and my maintenance department.
So they're all right in-house there?
They're all right in-house, yeah.
Okay. So right now you said you have about 860 doors, which is pretty big. How fast did you grow? Did it start off slow, or how's it been growing for you?
It started off very slow. I was sitting all by myself in a little office, way smaller than this one, with no clients. And within the first year, I had hit 100 units. And it kind of just grew. The last few years, it just ballooned and went really fast. But
wow, so it took a year to get to 100, and then only 6 to get, or under 6 to get over almost 900 doors.
yes.
Wow, that is fast growth. Okay, well, I mean, one other thing is I can say, in my portfolio in both Fort St. John and Dawson, Dawson Creek in particular has been really tough with property management. The options there I wasn't really thrilled with. But who's not here today is Shelley Smith, who works with Wanda in Dawson Creek, and she's probably the best manager in Dawson. We refer almost all of our clients to them in Dawson Creek, and we might have a separate video with her as well to kind of introduce. But she does work under Wanda, so really good team. They do manage all of my own personal stock. Okay, Wanda, well, thanks for the intro. I appreciate that, and let's get into just a little bit of market insights from you. So what I kind of wanted to ask you about is your take on vacancies, where things are at right now, where you think they're going to go relative to some of the projects that are online, and what do you think the impact of Site C that's under construction now, and the impact of LNG could be 5-6 years down the road. So maybe rather than throw all that at you, I'll ask you just first, where's kind of the vacancy sitting right now in the market for duplexes and houses and that kind of thing?
Right now we're sitting about 4 to 5% vacant with the duplexes and suited houses, that portfolio. I do see that growing a lot in the next few years, especially with Site C and LNG. I think that we are going to need a lot more of those types of units once this all starts coming together.
Okay. Now, when do you expect to see that vacancy rates will come down even further from 4 or 5%, and then rents to go up? Well, what does that look like for you, do you think, given the projects that are here right now?
I'm guessing it's probably 6 to 8 months is when we're really going to start to feel the growth with that stuff.
Yeah.
And I can see the vacancy rate going back down to where, we were typically 0 to 2% for years.
Those are the fun days, eh?
Those were the fun days, yes.
Yeah, you couldn't even get I know when we were doing that years ago, we'd put a for rent sign on the door and we'd have 100 calls. Well, that's not even exaggerating. A couple times we had 50 calls in a day,
Exactly.
Just from a sign,
Yeah, no, it was crazy, and it will get that way being here in the next short while. I'm sure.
Doesn't take long, yeah. So I guess even historically 4 or 5% is still pretty strong, and that's where we're kind of at today. Even relative of the price of oil and some of the slowdown we've experienced in the last 12 months, we're still very healthy in the rental market right now for these types of properties. I know that multifamily is a little bit higher vacancy because there's a lot of properties that have been built and have come online, but predominantly we're dealing with a different type of an asset class. So that's personally what I'm buying. I know in my personal portfolio we're seeing about 2% vacancy right now, but 4 to 5 is going to be a pretty safe number, I think, if that's a fair statement. So
Definitely.
okay, well I guess if in the next 6 to 8 months, and I kind of agree with that. I think by next summer we're going to have Site C ramping up quite a bit. There's about 600 employees there now, I guess, and it's supposed to come up to as many as 2,000 next summer. If LNG goes ahead, and we're expecting that it will in the next month or so, I don't think it'll be. I agree with your timeline, 6 to 8 months, where vacancies will probably come down back again to that approaching zero rate, and rents will come up as a byproduct of that. I mean, they always do when demand kind of skyrockets. So, what I'm expecting to see happen in my own portfolio in the next year or so is going to be increased cash flow, and I think that's something that people can expect here.
Definitely, yes.
Okay. But I mean, like anything, things can fluctuate. I mean, we've seen it. I mean, it can go up. We expect it can go up, but if as long as there's room in the properties where there's enough cash flow, where if things take longer, let's say rents do come down for whatever reason, as long as there's enough spread in the properties where you're never personally having to feed it every month, you're usually going to be pretty insulated from any market corrections. So that's the kind of stuff we usually make sure that when we're building or selling, that there's always enough spread or margin there to protect somebody from in the event that rents do come down, which can happen, but we're certainly not expecting that in this market. Okay, so maybe let's chat about some of the properties that we're dealing with right now. First off being duplexes. So I'll bring up our picture here of a duplex. So this is the Renfrew duplex that is kind of on the screen behind Wanda right now. This is typical for what we're seeing in Energy Park, for the station development, both of which are going to be some of the biggest developments in northern BC right now. So Wanda, you and I have chatted about these types of duplexes. We're about 1,500 square feet or plus. They usually start there, all the way up to 1,600 square feet with a full unfinished basement. Depending on the plan, we're going to be either a single or a double attached garage. Typically hardy board siding, all stainless appliances put in. Could you explain to us, first off, why or what type of tenants would be in a property like this as opposed to older stock or multifamily property?
Yeah, this type of development, these duplexes, they're going to attract the higher end tenants, the more executives, families moving up here, husbands higher up in his job, that type of clientele. You're going to get away from the more rubby ones that are
like the rig crews?
The rig crews, the transients. Yeah, I think you'll get longer term tenants in a duplex like this. The garages are obviously a huge plus up in the north because everybody wants that and get out of the cold. But yeah, they're much higher end tenants that you will get in a place like this.
And for anybody in Vancouver who's not really part of Canada, in my opinion, with their temperature, the garages are a big deal. I mean, when it's 40 below all winter, the ability to get into a vehicle that's warm and not have to warm it up, being at 40 below and scraping off ice off your windshields is a big thing.
It is huge.
Another thing we've noticed with the garages now is that a lot of people here have quads and toys and RVs and just stuff, right? And up here, there's not a lot of places to store it. The storage units are very expensive, so attached garages. I know for my house, I've got a big double garage and a detached shop. I don't park anything. I mean, I've got my quads and my Harley, all my stuff in those. I don't park my cars in there, which is kind of crazy, right? So anyway, so I guess in general, on a property like this with an unfinished basement. Now, first off, what do you think an unfinished basement does as far as attractiveness for a unit like this?
They're great too. Like you say, even with the storage, to have all that space for any unused stuff, storage, children's playrooms. A lot of times the families will use that basement as a play area for their children. When it's 40 below outside and they don't want to go outside, it's nice to have that space. So yeah, it's a huge plus.
So they can just get out of mom's hair for a while, they're saying.
Get out of mom's hair.
Okay, so we have a basement too. Okay, so basically, what would you expect to see for rents in those right now and kind of going forward? What would you see for something like this typically right now?
Typically right now, those are going right around the 2400. I can definitely see that rising. When we were at 0 and whatnot, they were up around the 2650, 27. So once we get back to that, I can definitely see them increasing a lot.
Kind of hitting that $2,700 a month range.
27,
so.
and we've had some that were higher than that as well. So.
Okay. So I know what we're basically projecting in our cash flow performance is about $2,400 a month for these. So you think that's a pretty fair number right now?
It is definitely a very fair number right now.
And then going forward, though, I mean, a year from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, when the dam effects start to come into town, that rate is very likely to increase again. It's not out in left field. You don't think at all?
No, not at all. They will definitely increase as the need comes.
Okay. So anyway, that's basically the duplexes, guys. Now, I'm going to have a bunch of other videos on those particular properties themselves, but that's kind of the benefits of the tenants that are going to be attracted to those kind of units from Wanda's standpoint. Now we'll look at the suited houses. We've talked about those a couple of times now. Okay, so in behind us right now is a home that I've just purchased myself, and Wanda's actually taken management on for me. I guess right away, probably tomorrow or something.
Yeah.
So we've got tenants moving into it right now, but I wanted to talk a little bit about, from Wanda's perspective, some of the benefits of the what we've done into this home. So Wanda, if you don't mind, I'll ask you maybe an item by item. We chatted about it really briefly beforehand, but from your standpoint, like from a property manager's perspective, and also from a tenant's perspective, could you explain to me the benefits, and maybe to our listeners here, the benefits of having a separate garage for each upper and lower suites, as well as separated driveways? First off, what does that do for you and for the tenants, maybe?
For me, it just saves a lot of headaches. You don't have, with them having the shared driveways, you're always, this person's too close to my vehicle, or, with the separated driveways like you've done in this one, tenants have their own space. There's no issues there.
So you don't get the tenant squabbling?
I have no arguing, yes. And same with the garage. A lot of the suited houses, the upstairs is the only one that gets a garage. With these, as well, the basement one gets the garage too. So it's a huge benefit. It makes marketing them a lot easier, and your tenants are happier.
Now, that's pretty unique in the market, I think, is it not?
It's very unique in the market.
Yeah.
Most do not have the second garage for the other.
So we tried that out in Dawson Creek, I think, for the first time 2 years ago. And as far as I was aware, it was the first time we've seen it out there. So when I asked the builder to do it, he looked at me and he thought I was crazy. And what it turned out, what we experienced now, and I'll ask you if you think this is kind of a fair statement in Fort St. John. But at Dawson Creek, what we noticed is that it cost us about $4,000 to put in the dividing wall. We had to get 2 garage doors now and 2 garage door openers. But we noticed a rental loss of about $75 for the upper suite. But we also gained about $150 for the basement suite because of that garage. So in general, just by putting that wall in, not only was the rental rate increased by I think about $80 or thereabouts in general, it also made that basement suite so much more attractive because there was nothing else like it in the market. So I think that would hold true in Fort St. John.
It will definitely hold true here as well. Yes.
Okay. Now, what do you think about the benefits to you and to the tenants on soundproofing between the units? Like we've done, and just before I throw in there, what we've done for these properties, again, if you haven't seen the video for the house itself, is we've got forced air furnace heat upstairs and electric baseboard downstairs, so there's no common ductwork. And then we've put in carpeting in the bedrooms upstairs to muffle sound. There's safe and sound insulation between the floor joists. We've done Brazilian channel, then Donna Kana, and then a level of 5/8 drywall. So we've really kind of went all out to create the best sound transmission class that we can. So with that being said, what does that mean for you guys long term as you manage it?
That's huge for us, for the tenants as well. When you have the up and down ones like that, a lot of the older ones, I mean, you could pretty much hear the baby crying upstairs. With a house like this, you will not have that. The tenants will be happier. And even who you choose. A lot of times in the older ones, we wouldn't put a family upstairs if we had a working person downstairs because of the noise. You won't have that issue with these houses at all, and so it's definitely huge. There's not the complaints because of the people upstairs are too noisy or whatnot, or shift workers as well. It's perfect for a shift worker because you're not going to hear that noise so they can sleep during the day while the other ones are up at night, kind of thing, and it won't have any problems at all.
And that sound is a big deal. I mean, I know, like, personally, I own a lot of older suited homes. I've lived in a lot of them. I mean, we've, just like I said about the baby, I was that family upstairs where we had tenants downstairs. We had the brand new baby that we brought home, and I felt pretty sad for our tenants downstairs because, our baby would, as babies do, they cry. And this is kind of what happens, and we felt pretty bad about it. So, the reason that these kind of homes got created was, or the engineering went into it to make it an easier property manager standpoint, was from experience on living in those situations. So less squabbling,
squabbling, more privacy.
Yeah. So happier tenants.
Happier tenants.
Long term. Okay. Now what about separate electric meters? Like what we've done here is we've got 2 individual meters. So first off, each unit has its own electrical panel as well as its own meter. So they pay their own utilities and that kind of thing. Tell me a little bit about that. What do you think the difference with that is?
That is another one that is a huge thing for us. Not just for the accounting, because in the older ones you're trying to split 60-40. You would have...
So explain. So you've got one bill coming in, and you're trying to allocate who's paying what for each upper and lower suite?
Exactly. And then that always makes the squabbles happen again, because the upstairs people like it hot, downstairs people like it cold. They leave their windows open, so then they argue about, well, I shouldn't have to pay that much because they want it warmer or colder and that kind of thing, or use more electricity, leave their lights on.
So it's a fight, so it's an argument, but it's also a big headache for you to deal with that.
It's a huge headache, and it's time consuming. By the time, even when the tenants are moving out, you gotta figure out, okay, so this person was here for that long, so this portion. So it is a huge accounting nightmare. Having the separate suites, or the separate electrical things for them, the tenants are responsible for their own. So if they want it warm, they want to pay that little bit extra, then they can crank the heat or that kind of thing.
So it's nice just to alleviate all of it gets rid of it, just makes your job probably a lot easier.
It makes our job totally a lot easier, and it gets, so the tenants are not fighting about things either. One turns the heat on, and the other one, that makes the tenants fight as well. So having them totally separate like that is huge. It's a great thing to do.
Now, how about for tenants not wasting utilities if they know that they're the only one on the hook? How about that as far as conservation of energy?
Definitely. If they have to pay for it, they're going to be a lot more conservative.
Funny how that works, eh?
It does.
If you're on the bill, you're careful all of a sudden. Now you're spending energy. Okay, well, great. Now, I guess the last thing on this particular suite is we've done separate heating systems. So, I mean, it's, as I said before, it's forced air heat upstairs and electric baseboard downstairs. We've also separated the hot water system. So each unit has its own on-demand hot water system. Maybe a little bit about what do you think the benefits of a separate heating system and hot water systems are, which is a little bit different than most houses. Typically, there's one hot water heater heating both suites, and typically how it usually works.
And everybody uses their hot water pretty much at the same time. So in the mornings when they're showering or come home after work, they're not running out of hot water. They've each got their own. There's no issues that way. The same with the heating. The upstairs tenants, they can have their heat set where they like it. Same with the downstairs. It's not shared,
So less, again, a little bit more tenant enjoyment, right?
Exactly.
So if we add up the benefits of the driveways, electric meters, the soundproofing, the heating systems, all those things added in, what does that do for the basement suite in these homes in general, and also the attractiveness of the upper suite, because they don't have to deal with the sound of the lower suite as well. It kind of changes the game on those, I'd imagine.
It does, and it makes them easier to market, easier to rent. Tenants are going to stay longer because they're going to be happy in their homes. They are not going to have any issues typically with neighbors and whatnot, so definitely easier to rent, longer term tenants.
So a little more hands off for you too, which is a little bit nicer.
And a little more hands off.
Yeah. Okay.
Less calls the better on those ones.
Now, as far as properties like this, what would you expect that we see for rent on an upper level today and going forward? For the upper suite. So if we're going to be 1,600 square feet, with the garage and that, what do you see or expect roughly now?
Right now, we're looking 22, 23 in that area for the upstairs ones, and that could easily go up by quite a bit if things all play out the way that they're supposed to. Downstairs, you're looking around 18 with the two bedrooms, right? Correct.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, 2 bedroom.
Yeah, and the garage and whatnot. So
Okay, so that basically mirrors what we've got on a pro forma right now. I know just in the one that I've bought, I moved a good friend into, like an employee of mine, and I cut him a deal at $21.50 a month, and that's the one that you're actually that's this home exactly here. That's the one that we're just closing on in a couple days. So okay, great. So that's basically in general, and thank you for that one because that's pretty much what we're building mostly now, guys. Is going to be the duplexes and the legally suited homes and that kind of thing. Now, one other thing I didn't talk about is from your standpoint, you know, we've got fully legal basement suited homes as opposed to you know, illegal or non-conforming secondary suites.
Yes.
These are both legal and conforming. So when we, and as far as I'm aware, and I can say this pretty confidently, this subdivision in Energy Park as well as the station are the only subdivisions in town that have R2 zoning which allow for those legal suites. So a very unique type of zoning to allow for that. So we can't just build a home like that anywhere in town. The right zoning has to be in place, and the city is enforcing that. Okay, good. So maybe we'll run over to how the relationship would operate and how the process would work from, you know, if you're, let's say, a Toronto member, or you're from Vancouver, or you're, you know, anywhere else but here, how you would work with Wanda, you know, on closing a property, what that looks like after you've purchased. So let's talk about fees maybe, traditionally. I mean, one thing that, you know, is kind of a template or kind of standard right across the country is usually a 10% management fee. That's kind of a standard in Canada right now. For our clients, we've negotiated a $100 a door fee with Wanda. And this applies to both duplexes and suited homes. So a suited home like this, for example, is going to cost $200 a month in management fees. A side-by-side duplex is also going to be the same $200 a month fee, plus GST, I imagine, and
Yes.
any bank fees or anything like that. So maybe explain to us why you know, we're getting a discount from the typical 10 points. Because when I on a duplex, for example, that $100 fee works out to about 4% property management fees. You know, maybe explain to me why the newer properties and why you're able to offer that discount relative to the kinds of properties that we're bringing to the table for you.
Well, for one, it's the volume. There's a lot of volume there between yours and all your clients that come forward. That's why we've offered that. And it's also the newer properties are a lot less management needed. There's not the typical repairs and constant furnaces breaking down and those kind of things. So
they're easier for you.
They're very easy. Yes,
Okay.
they're for quite a few years. There should be actually no really maintenance needed. They're newer, so they market better, and people are more attracted to them. So they're easier to rent. It doesn't take us as long to rent them.
Okay. Now, with a higher end property, with the type of tenant profile that you get, is there typically a little bit less work for you than an older property as well? Is that?
Oh, definitely, because you're going to get the higher end tenants, the more executive type people, the families.
Now, one thing is, sorry to interrupt you.
No.
On a property like that, I know some of the people I've talked to are a little bit worried that if we're, you know, building really nice properties, that there's a shortage of that kind of demand. Do you think we're going to see a shortage of demand for nice quality properties going forward right now?
I don't think so. No, I think we're going to need more of them, more so than not. And they are easier to rent. There's going to be a lot of, like with Site C, all of the engineers and whatnot, those kind of people, they're not going to be the ones living in the older stuff or the camps. They're going to be wanting a nice home to come to.
You know, what's interesting with that, I know in Site C, which is only 5 minutes from my office here, they're going to be housing about 70% of the workforce in the camps. But interestingly, the 30% thereabouts that won't be in the camps are typically going to be the more upper end guys, the managerial types and that kind of thing that want to bring their families in. And so, you know, the overflow that we are going to see from Site C, in my opinion, is probably going to be, you know, that people are going to want these types of properties as opposed to being in an older condo or something like that, right?
Exactly.
So just to answer that question from my standpoint, I see that kind of washing in it more, which is why I'm personally buying a lot of these exact properties right now. Okay, great. Well, we talked about the costing and why the discounts there. Now let's get into the big things. How do out-of-town investors work with you on a purchase? So first off, let's walk through the process of when I give keys to you on a client's behalf. Let's say that construction is still a month out. Let's say that I tell you the property is going to be finished and ready to rent by March 1st. And I give you the keys and access to view the property and all the photos for advertising and all that a month previous. How would that look for you to get the tenant or get the property ready to rent on the date of completion? What would that process look like?
So yes, once we get the keys, we would get, well, like Mitch said, he would supply the pictures for us on these. We would start marketing them right away. We would get them on the internet, we get them on our websites, trying to find that tenant prior to, it closing, so that the day that it's closed or you get the possession, we can have a tenant in there.
Okay. Now, one thing about that, what do you see as a typical turnaround time? Like if somebody bought a property, let's say they started advertising the day that it was finished, what's a typical turnaround time that's realistic that you would expect that it would take you to, let's say, fully lease a house or a duplex from the time that you got the
Typically, it takes us about a month. We have people that are starting to look here for January. Typically, we'll start looking at the beginning of December. So they either have to give their month's notice or just give them plan time to move here if that's what the case may be. Okay. So we usually ask for about a month. Give us a month to get them in there.
Okay, so in about a month's time, and it's funny enough with that month period, when you purchase a property, typically your first payment isn't due until 30 days after you close. So you should have, generally speaking, because there's always exceptions, but typically we'd have rent coming in within about 30 days.
Correct.
Okay. So with that coming in, now we should chat about how the investors can be as active as they want to be or as hands-off as they want to be in the advertising and tenant screening process. So if you're joining us from Toronto, for example, what I want to go through is what you can do to be proactive in your investment as far as leasing the property is concerned. So before I hand this over to Wanda, one of the things that I want to discuss is what I can supply or we can supply to you and with any one of the properties that we have is all of the end finished photography, like high quality photos that you would want to use in your rental search, as well as a video tour where we do full video tours of every property that I could supply to any buyer that you could from Toronto, from Newfoundland, from China, for example. You could post that on any one of our online sites and then have tenants call you directly or call Wanda. And so if you wanted to be hands-on, you could do your own advertising and tenant screening and even give Wanda a fully finished lead, or you could put ads out and have them go directly to Wanda's office. Now, they do their own advertising as well, but I know some people like to explore all the different rental options that are out there and like push them out to some of the paid sites where if Wanda was to use it, they would be, and I'll give this to you in 2 seconds. So, but you're able to be as hands-on or as hands-off as you want. So maybe I want to let you explain how they can maybe assist with the advertising in a way that works for you as well.
Okay. A lot of our clients like to have that hands-on thing. So what they would do is they would post an ad on like Kijiji, those kind of websites that us as a management company would have to pay for, where you could put them on for free. So they will put them on there. They will have different things. Sometimes the person responding would call you directly, and then you would just give them the details and then pass them on to us. Otherwise, a lot of them, they will just forward the whole person's response to us, and then my staff and myself, we would contact them and make arrangements for viewings and applications and tenant screening and that kind of thing.
Okay. So I guess with that then, I mean, like technically somebody could buy up here and not really be involved too much at all if they chose not to be.
Yes, so, definitely. It's very hands-off for a lot of our clients because we do handle everything. We handle all the advertising, the tenant screening, all that kind of thing. So if you want to be, you can be a little bit more active and do that kind of thing. Yeah. And if you really don't want to, then that's where we come in. So
it's something you can do, but you're definitely not required to. It's more of an option so it's pretty versatile for somebody if they want to come in and do their own thing.
It is, yeah. And we work very closely with the owners, so we get to know them. We get to know what they want how much involvement they want. Okay. Some want us to call them on everything, and
some don't want to hear from you.
Some don't want to hear from me.
Okay. Well, maybe we've only got a few more minutes to kind of get finished here. Then, from a tenant screening process, how does that look? When a tenant applies, what is the process that goes through the screening? Relatively, what does that look like?
We do have an application form that they have to fill out. They have to provide us with their references, their work references, any rental history if they have it. And then we also do a criminal search. Okay. We do an online criminal search for all of them who apply. And yeah, we check every reference that they have. A lot of for us in Fort St. John, and being in this business for as long as I have, we know a lot of the do not rent to people. So that kind of helps as well. For somebody out of town trying to screen a tenant, they wouldn't have that knowledge that they may not put on that application.
Yeah, they haven't got the boots on the ground and kind of know what's going on. Now, what about Facebook? Do you guys ever use Facebook to see?
We do use Facebook. Yeah. We use that quite a bit, actually.
Pretty interesting to see who knows who.
Yes, and it can be pretty interesting. Some of the people kind of lie, but yes.
So it was a great tenant screening process. And in fact, it's a great screening process for almost anything. You can kind of tell pretty quickly what somebody's into a lot of the time.
Yes.
Usually, that's
partying every day on their Facebook.
Yeah, you get to see if they're cuddling a big dog, right? And if they say they got no animals in their application. So I love Facebook for that kind of thing. Okay, let's talk about the move-in process. So once you've selected a tenant and decided how they're going to move in, what does that look like when they move in? As far as what checks do you do for damages and all that kind of thing?
We do a full check. So once we've gotten them approved, they've paid the rent, they've paid all their deposits, then we actually take them over to the suite and we go through everything. We have a 3-page checklist of the condition of everything. The brand new ones, obviously, it's going to be pretty quick, but if there are damages or there's deficiencies, it's all marked on there when they move in. And then that same sheet, when they are done with their tenancy, we take it and we do the move out on exactly the same sheet, so we can compare, this is how it looked when you moved in, and this is how it looks when you move out.
Okay, so I guess for tenant damage on brand new property, especially on brand new property, it's pretty easy to do the walk-in because it should be basically perfect pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's pretty documented, right? So if there's damage that goes on, and there always is with tenants moving out, but if you can allocate it back to the tenant, I mean, reasonable wear and tear accepted, I suppose. So that's a pretty thorough process. Now let's go through the process of how money gets handled, right? So by the time, how the process looks of when the tenants pay you rent, the time that you hold on to that rent and what you pay for, and then how the the buyers would receive their end, pay at the end.
Okay. So right now, how we do it is we collect the rent at the beginning of the month. The tenant comes in, they pay the rent. It goes into a trust account that I set up for each one of my clients. You will have your own trust account. And then during the month, if there are any bills that need to be paid, any utilities, our management fees, that kind of thing, that all gets taken off during the month. And then on the last day of the month, the owner's portion is deposited into your account on that last day. And usually within the first 2 or 3 days of the following month, you will get your income and expense statement emailed to you, so you can see all your expenses, all your income, your tenants, who's in there,
okay.
who's paid.
So I guess as part of that, there's a rent roll attached, I guess, that shows who's there and what the rental rates are and all that kind of thing.
And how much our security deposit is that we're holding for them, and yes.
Okay, so in general then, if let's say that the process, if you purchased a property, and if it took 30 days to get a tenant into the property, and they paid rent 30 days into the process, you're not going to receive income for another 30 days after that, because you hold that money for a 30-day period to pay off all your expenses, and then the owners receive their funds within 30 days of you receiving it.
Exactly.
So if it takes a month to rent a property out, you as the owner are not going to receive funds for about 60 days, which is fine. So one of the things that we can do as investors is we can ask our banks to set our first payment 2 or sometimes even 3 months down the line. So it's quite a handy thing. It just saves a little bit of cash flow from day one.
Another thing that we do tell people is if they have the ability to set their dates, is not to have your mortgage come out on the 1st.
Use a little bit of time.
Yeah, so give you that time just in case you need it too. So
okay.
The 5th, 6th is a good time for that mortgage payment to be able to come out.
Fantastic. Now, one other thing, for repairs and maintenance, if you have something that goes wrong, which at some point it always does, I assume that I don't assume I know, but you've got the full team there to handle basically anything that goes wrong with it.
We do. We have full maintenance staff. I have 4 full-time maintenance guys. One is a licensed plumber, which is great here because
that's massive for insurance.
Yes, it is. I'm trying to just get a contractor to pop out at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the evening. You're paying overtime a lot of times for that.
And you're lucky to pay overtime because in a town like Fort St. John, every plumber and electrician and pipe fitter, they all want to be working in the oil fields where they're making 3 or 4 times as much. It's not as easy as making a phone call to get somebody. That's not how it works here. Having a licensed plumber on staff is a way bigger deal than you'd expect in almost anywhere else in the country. Here, it's very, very important.
Yeah.
Toronto, Vancouver, there's plumbers everywhere. Here, there's lots of plumbers, but they don't want to come to your house for a 5-minute job.
No.
So,
And we have a 24-hour emergency call line as well. So if somebody's furnace goes out at 7 o'clock at night, they just call our office. It gets transferred to the cells. Whoever's on call calls the appropriate person.
okay. So there's something there in the event that something goes wrong, which is really, really big. So what that means is peace of mind for somebody if they're not here in town. And then lastly, owner inquiries. So let's say an owner, they get a statement, they've got a question about it. Who would they connect with in the office? Is that you directly, or is that who depending on the challenge, let's say it's an accounting question, who would they connect with in there, and how would that be handled?
The majority of it I do handle myself still. But I do have, Dorothy is one of the ladies in my office, and she helps me with the statements and the accounting and paying the bills, that kind of thing. Pretty much any of the girls could answer any question you have, but the majority of them still like to come to me, email me, you've got questions. I'm answering emails at 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. Okay.
Last night.
Well, I think the last thing is we've covered quite a bit here right now. I think the last thing I kind of want to go through is just for people that aren't in town, and they're kind of nervous about investing in a region because, they're not there, right? And then they're a little bit nervous about that. How many of your clients right now don't live in Fort St. John? What does that look like for you?
90% of my clients do not live in Fort St. John. Probably another 80% I've actually never physically met. We talk on the phone, we email.
So did you say 80% of your clients you've never met?
I've never met.
Wow. Well, okay, that's a shock to me. I didn't expect it was that high.
Yeah, no, there's a lot that, because we can handle everything, like right from the time you're looking to buy a place. We can go in, look at Mitch's stuff with him and decide this is what we think you can get for rent. So yeah, I've done that for many clients. So.
Okay, so really, not living here is really not then a barrier to coming into the region. So if you're 860 doors, thereabouts, is it safe to say then that 80 or 90% of those are from out-of-town investors?
Definitely.
Wow, so that's over 700 units, almost coming on to 800 units then of properties that you manage where the owners are absent owners.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow, well, that's a lot. I mean, and I would tell you, when I was doing management, I noticed the same thing. Almost all of my clients were not here, except for me. I was, I was here, but
Yeah.
it was a little bit different.
Yeah, but there are not a lot of them that are actual local investors. They're all Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, all over.
Okay. Well, maybe before we wrap up here right now, is there anything else that you would think would be valuable for an out-of-town buyer to kind of know, or do you think we've covered everything? What do you think?
I think we've pretty much covered everything. Just, between Mitch and I both, we're very hands-on with what we do, and my company is the same and my staff is the same. So, yeah, I think we've pretty much covered everything. And if you do have any questions, we're always available to answer any questions that you may have.
Cool. Okay, well, listen, thank you very much, guys. Hope this video was helpful to you. And Wanda, thank you for coming.
Thank you
very much.